Hello, everyone. So excited to have you on today. I'm Cindy Hubert, and I'll be leading our call this morning to talk about our knowledge management capability assessment tool, and specifically honing in on measurement, one of my favorite topics and has been for over 2 decades. There is something magical about measurement when you start talking about it with people because it gets their attention and they pay attention. So we're going to talk about that as a very important capability. But as we do that, let me get started. Please feel free to use your chat feature. If you have a question, please ask that. I have no polls today, so I'm just relying on you to interact and provide some insights. I hope you'll do that. And we'll get moving along. So with that said, we are going to dive into just a little bit about the capability of measurement. For those of you who may be on and just seeing this for the very first time, APGC about 15 years ago developed with a group of our members, advanced knowledge management program leaders and people who were doing a lot of cool things, developed this maturity model. And in that maturity model, we measure a KM program across 4 main areas: strategy, people, process, content, and IT. And we look at 140 capabilities across 12 sub areas under each of those main categories. And they're all important. And for those of you who have joined us month after month this year, you know that we've been taking a deep dive into each of these capabilities before talking about the assessment tool in general. So I'd like to do that again with you today. Let me just say a little bit about the importance of measurement. First of all, when we conducted some research about 4 years ago now, looking at what capabilities accelerate your development of knowledge management activities and approaches, measurement was in the top 3. It was second to the business case. And I think that's very interesting because you'd say, oh, Cindy, you mean if we begin measuring right away, we're going to drive a lot of the things that go on in these other capabilities? Yep, that's what I mean. Because as I said, when you measure something, people start paying attention. It's a human nature. It's our human nature to do that because we like to excel. We like to have good performance. We like to be green on a dashboard. We like to say you had more participation than your other business unit. And so it just gets people's attention. And if you do it in a right way, if you really follow developing those capabilities early on and using it as a way to get people engaged, not only just participating, but engaged and interested, you'll go a lot longer and you'll move a lot faster. So we want to take you through each of those capabilities. I pulled out just a couple of things I want to highlight, and then we'll talk about the tool in general. So for those of you who have been attached to the knowledge management capability assessment tool, you've probably seen some of our marketing efforts. You've probably talked to me, Darcy Lemons, who manages our capability assessment tool, or someone who has said, hey, we're really excited. We have upgraded the tool and we've made it easier. We've made it more objective, and we've streamlined everything. So while the integrity of the capability statements are still very similar, some have been fine-tuned, it's much easier for you to respond, number one, because we've actually given you a range of what we expect to see for each of these statements, and then you add your own specific things. And we'll go through that tool and actually let you see that, because I'm really excited about it. But what you see here is a streamlined version of measurement. You know, when you develop a maturity model, you have to be really careful that you're looking for demonstrated capability and that you're not creating a roadmap with details. It's really easy to fall into that. And you want this to be a guide for your roadmap, but again, a roadmap carries many more specific things that may be very specific to your organization. So let's go through these. Maturity level 1, initiate for measurement. There are 3 capabilities we look for. Regardless of where you are, you always want to make sure there is a value proposition for KM. You want to make sure that you are not double dipping and investing in things you already have. So you want to make sure you really understand what capabilities you have in knowledge management and that you leverage those for reuse, because that's our whole intent, that we have cycles of improvement, but that we always leverage things we have and we don't recreate. That costs money and resources. And then that at this point in time, you're really looking at your critical knowledge in certain business domains inside of the enterprise. This helps you focus. This is a very important capability because it'll keep you from doing too many misstarts. It'll help you focus big time. At level 2, when you begin developing more your capabilities, you'll probably have done some things. You'll probably have collected some stories. That's a very popular thing to do at maturity level 1 for measurement that shows some quantified value. So you'll start looking at, you know, do you have some satisfaction across your organization with employees that may have had some early participation or ongoing participation? But this is a level 2 capability, and you want to make sure that even if you're a level 3, 4, or 5, you always come back to this capability to make sure that your audience is with you and in step. And the way to do that is to make sure you stay in point with them. And so this is a very important thing to do both early on and continuously inside of the organization. You want to consistently be doing some type of cost benefits analysis to make sure that your efforts and your projects are on point. You have activity measures in place. Those are very important so you can correlate to outcomes. That you understand your key performance indicators that you use for KM. And I'm going to talk about how we link some of these together. I have an example for you. And then finally, that at level 2, even with the capabilities, early capabilities, and these may be idiosyncratic across the organization, you may have demonstrated activities in different business units, but you want to make sure that you're getting a deliverable, an impact on someone's work, that there is some tangible way that you are looking at knowledge management. And some people say, oh, Cindy, this is so early on. No, it's not. You want to be able to say, if I'm getting people together, if I'm investing people's time in a community of practice, and I'm looking at participation, how is what they are doing correlating and impacting some deliverable or outputs? Are we getting it better, faster, cheaper? Are we getting a better, going to the better part? Are we getting more quality involved in here? What is happening? Is cycle time being impacted? So these are all very important things. And I'll be very honest with you. I think a lot of times we forget to do this in the early stages. We just start doing things, and we're interested in getting leaders on board, and we're interested in getting our objectives and strategy in place, and we're real excited about lessons learned in communities and the transfer of critical knowledge to retain it because our experts are leaving. That's all great. If you're going to do those things, figure out what you expect from them, both in terms of performance and outputs. So enough of that. Let me give you a couple of examples in each of these 2 levels that I think are important. So the whole value proposition, that whole business case, I said earlier, the business case is the #1 accelerator. You've got to be able to start early on aligning your activities to what it might impact in the value. And our U.S. Navy Carrier Team 1 is no stranger to this. They've done a good job through the years of really making sure that they understand how they're impacting their ability to get a large carrier in and out of overhaul, getting it ready to go out to sea again. So this is just one example for them, for you to start this thinking exercise to say, if we have communities, they call them knowledge sharing networks, and they're coming together to produce deliverables, that may be innovation, it may be problem solving, we're actually impacting something that the project team who's performing the availability can use. How does that and the participation rate start impacting our core business processes. Now, the Navy got it right early on when they began aligning their KM activities to their core business processes. So they sort of set themselves up for success. And one of their processes that they focus on is work integration. How do we integrate work for getting this carrier in and out? And that's part of a process, very detailed, as you can imagine, like all of your business processes. But they look at how knowledge can be reused, provided to that team, so we don't make the same mistakes as we may have done in another, that we don't spend time recreating the wheel of something that we've done already. And what this does is you start seeing an opportunity to eliminate redundancy, you streamline the work, there's some cycle time implications in here. There's also some cost implications or resource. If you're eliminating redundancy, you're able to accelerate your speed to getting your carrier out on time, on budget, with a good amount of quality. And of course, outcomes here, you see a very large, outcome, but that's what you're going for. And typically when you start drawing this line, again, early on, you can start seeing where knowledge management may have the opportunity to impact. And this is very important. Now, I always say, this begins your thinking exercise. And I will tell you all, years ago, we used to think this was just a thinking exercise, that we just hadn't thought about it. Au contraire. What happens is you realize you may not have the data you need. And so that is why from day one, you've got to understand what kind of data is important. I wanted to also share with you, this is from our one of our members, Catholic Relief Services, talking about the satisfaction. So again, think of it's a mature capability at level 2 to be able to go out and really understand how people are experiencing what you're providing in terms of capabilities. And so this is just to give you an example of what they do for their communities. They have a very strong community program, and they are surveying them at least once a year to really understand how they may improve the capabilities so that these communities can function a little bit better. And of course, I always think that your qualitative information that you see on the right hand of your screen is very important too, because that can give you some great insights to what people are doing. So, value path, connecting the dots early on, and making sure that your audience is in point with you are continuous capabilities you will want to continue as you move forward. So let's talk a little bit about maturity level number 3, because this is where, as I said, in level 1, level 2, you start getting some measures, you start thinking about them, you want to pull them together. This is really where the rubber meets the road, because you are going to spend a little bit more time, again, with satisfaction. You see this again, that you start taking that value of investment and actually calculating the formal return or the value. I realize some of you may be in the public sector and are not looking for that specifically, but we're all looking for productivity, ways to accelerate learning or time to competency, and impacting our mission or our large organizational objectives. At this level 3, you will begin to start seeing a more formal measurement process in place for knowledge management, where knowledge management has the ability to identify the key measures, to collect those on a regular basis, to analyze those and make sure that they're doing what they know to do, and then to report them back to the business leaders. And you really know you've hit a signpost of engagement when your leaders start expecting to see these dashboards and seeing how participation is being correlated to outcomes. And you also then get a sense of standard measures that are used to monitor the impact of performance. So these are real strong. They're very tangible, very strong at level 3, because at this point, you're moving to a more standardized state. So I have a couple of slides for you just to hit home on these impact. One is a framework, and I have to admit to you all, we had developed this so many years ago. I don't even think we knew how important it was at the time we developed it, but boy, do we do now. And part of this is about that linkage that I told you, and this helps you really start linking those activity measures, the outputs that knowledge management has, to the business process. And you're going to need a set of standard knowledge management measures to do this, but you're also going to need to understand this business workflow, because if you do not have that in place, you got a problem. And we find this to be one of the issues, that people do get to outcomes, but the way they get to it in terms of these process measures, these leading indicators, is sometimes very messy, and it's hard to do the correlation. So I think this is a great model to help you think about your KM program activities and then how they align to the business itself. And of course, this links to the actual workflow, so you can see correlations to people's activities. Don't spend a lot of time creating what you might think are innovative and new knowledge management measures, because I'm really here to tell you, I feel like APQC has done that collection and curation for you. So in our resource library, there are hundreds of ways that people measure. I've pulled out just a few so you can just look at it across some general approaches that people do. In the center, of course, what you see is the knowledge flow processes that you need. The enablers, the program and all the approaches you use, are those things that help that wheel turn. I always call it the wheel of fortune, because you want to get to business value. And there's just a lot, as you can see, when you look across both the KM program, sometimes the KM program actually uses as a proxy the measures for their approaches they support: communities, lessons learned, transfer of best practices, transfer of knowledge, after action reviews. There's hundreds. You all have hundreds of these. And I want you to really bring it down to what is most important. What does your audience need to see? And I've given you a link here. When you get these slides, we have key measures for knowledge management initiatives. This will give you a whole article on how people do this and what the most common measures are. So don't spend a lot of time thinking about that. Use what people have used successfully already. The most important is to go back to the value path that I showed you. Get your measurements in alignment from your business, and then start your analytics behind that. And that's the hard part, right? It's the really hard part. Okay, with that said, let me continue on to level 4 and level 5. And excuse me, I've got a little static here. I'm going to put my headphones on, if you don't mind. There, I hope you're hearing me a little bit more clearly. I was getting some static on my line. Okay, so maturity level 4. This is optimized, and when you get into a very important part of, how measurement is going. And this is when you begin to start not looking only at the efficiency, but the health and effectiveness of your efforts. Again, you start seeing enhanced competencies, and you also begin to see where knowledge management starts integrating with enterprise reporting. And this can start with a business unit, that is fine, but it often expands as you move to level 5. You can see that you start correlating to the broader organization's performance management system, and you start linking to employee performance outcomes. So you're starting to look for contributions, how people have used or reused knowledge. And of course, you're always looking for that impact. And there's so many ways to do this. We have a lot of really great insights and information for you. This just happens to be from Boeing. It's one of the examples that they've had over the years, where they start looking at how engagement, knowledge sharing, and continuity, which is the continuity of the knowledge management enablers provided to them. and they begin to link it into their business scorecards. And this becomes very powerful when you start talking about this and actually seeing what your knowledge can do for you. It's an exciting thing to see. Your business leaders get very excited when they see this, and it becomes just a part of the conversation. And I will tell you this, one of the, I think, more disturbing things I've seen through the years is that knowledge management scorecards, as they're linked to business scorecards, always have green on them. And it's not that I don't want us to excel and be at top performers all the time, but I think when you are continuously seeing a green, you need to challenge yourself and say, but what else? If we've already knocked out that we're getting 85% participation, what is it that we need to do to take that to the next level? Maybe it's the quality of participation that you need to look at, because you may not be getting the outcomes that you want. You may not be getting the problem solved, or you're getting a lot of redundancy, problem solved over and over again, and no one's reusing that information. And so this is what you always want to pay attention to. When you align to these scorecards, make sure that it's doing the things you want to see in terms of value, but also the efficiency of your KM activity, because that matters a lot. Okay, so I'm looking to see, I don't believe we have any questions left. I think you all are very easy today, so please challenge as we go through. If there's anything else on measurement, I'll talk a little bit about holistic measurement, because of course, one of the things you do measure as part of the measurement capability is your knowledge management program. So going back to the 12 capabilities, these are all tied into these 5 levels of maturity, the levels of knowledge management maturity. And as you can see, just as I described the measurement holistically with all 12 of your capabilities, you're moving from getting started, initiating some activities, to a stronger development piece, beginning to standardize your processes and approaches. Optimize means that you are measured and getting very predictive. Your knowledge is getting to where it needs to be. It's being used, it's being refined, it's being updated, until find your continuously improving practices. And it's exciting to see, you know, even 5 or 6 years ago, a level 5 organization in KM was pretty hard to come by. And we've seen that more and more as we've continued to recognize people for excellence in KM. So it's really cool to see when you start getting to level 5, you are just baked into the organization. You are doing those things that matter and getting your knowledge where it needs to be, so that you're using your knowledge for professional services to compete. You're using your knowledge to innovate. You're bringing your collaboration capabilities together to solve big, wicked problems. And that's when you really know you've reached it. And again, I want to point out, just as I did with measurement, when you are in those higher levels, 3, 4, and 5, you always go back to level 1 and 2 to see, are you doing those things that act as foundational for keeping you at the top of your game? So always remember that. That's how these work together. One of the things we see, of course, is that the benefits of assessing KM maturity, people are more likely to embed in business processes, which means people can get to the knowledge easily and access it at their point of need. We're more likely to see enhanced capabilities, 3 times more likely to see enhanced capabilities. And those that do this on a regular basis are more likely to enhance and invest in their infrastructure and competencies to meet demand. We saw a lot of this going on during our global pandemic. And when it all started, the people who were just getting started with their digital efforts, those got accelerated quite a bit. Now, that wasn't exactly the benefit of assessing your maturity, but coming back now and looking at how this is impacting your other capabilities. Are you using automation and artificial intelligence to really support business processes? Are you getting knowledge to the point of need faster? So I think that's a really important thing to look at as you look at these benefits, to make sure that your program is doing what it needs to do and making a difference. There's some other reasons that people take the KM capability assessment. Remember, I told you it's more streamlined. We'll get to that in just a second. But it just helps you do a lot of things. I think that when we present your results to senior leaders, when we're working with some of our members and take this and we think it, your leadership immediately wants to say, well, how do we become a level 5? You know, it's that challenge, right? You just always want to be there. It always requires an explanation of saying, you can get there, but here's what you have, here's the risk associated. Does it make sense for you to do that level of investment? So I think what it does for me is really over here on this right side, it gives leaders the ability to have a shared vision of where they want to go and what this might look like. So while I said this is not a roadmap, this is a set of capabilities that you always want to have, it will help you begin to picture and to shape that journey that you're going to be on. I think also the other power in this, and we've learned this from our Excellence in Knowledge Management program, is that this whole learning from other organizations. I mean, guys, we've excelled. Well, KM has been around for 25 years. It's just always evergreen. There's always something new to learn. And what's cool is that everybody is always willing to share what they've learned. And that's, I think, what's brought our community together, kept us so connected, and it's kept us advancing our efforts. Because if something doesn't work, we have somebody else who might be able to tell us why and give us some examples of what will happen. And of course, let's not lose sight. This is a snapshot in time of these 3 organizations, because I will say this, some organizations that hit level 3, 4, and 5, things shift, right? Global pandemics occur, focus gets redirected, new leaders come in, rapid market changes. There's always something impacting your business. And frankly, there's always some effort inside of your organizations that's trying to impact them. KM is one of those improvement efforts. We just happen to be focused on the knowledge asset that's very critical to your businesses. So this is a snapshot, and what it really does is, I think this is a great chart actually for showing value and impact and driving home the need for measurement, because it starts out with the business case, the value proposition. This is what we wanted to see, what we want to do. We've used approaches and technology to get to very tangible results, and all of these organizations have been able to prove that time and time again. It's not a one-off thing. It becomes part of the standard way you operate your KM program. Okay, so a little bit about this tool. As you guys can see, I'm excited about it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, and then I think I'm going to have time. I'm going to actually take you to our website and let you see this. So as I said, we're on version 2.0. Started developing this in 2006, 2007, had it full-blown going 2008. So you can see the trajectory. There 13, 14 years of really working on this. What we've done to the tool is we have taken the capability statements that you just seen for measurement, and we've turned those into questions. Now, when you take the assessment, one of the most important things for you to make a decision about is what is going to be our scope. Are we doing it for the entire organization? Are we doing it for a business unit? Is it for a core discipline or domain, or is there something else we need to be looking at? And all of these are okay. What I always tell people is, and I just talked to a brand new program leader. She was, the organization was not new to knowledge management. They had tried it. They hired her to come in and, of course, get things going. And she's got a great background in knowledge management. And we were talking about her taking this. And I said, okay, what you have to be careful of is that you truly understand the entire enterprise if you're going to take this, because she's got a very narrow view right now because she's new to the enterprise. And so you start as big as you can go, as big as you can get information from people on, as big as you have insights for. You can start wherever you'd like, but I always say start as big as you can go, and you just may know you need to collect some information or gather responses from other people that may be partnering with you to support the knowledge management program. As you see in that next bullet, there's all kinds of people who can provide. We find that If you're in a knowledge management team that's been in place, say you've had capabilities going for 2+ years, you will be able to go quite a long way in completing this, but I would always then take it a little bit more broadly to our advocates, our end users. A lot of you have knowledge champions, you have leaders, sponsors. You want to be able to get things in. Your IT partners, your human resource partners, talent management, they may all have been part of the development of your capabilities, and you will certainly want to get their input. But again, it's easier to take objective views, and then you can collect the unique response for each of the capabilities that you have. So with that said, the process we use is still very similar. You're going to be able to go in and pull down the capability assessment tool from our website. You will complete it. When I show it to you, I'll talk a little bit about the length of time it takes. It takes less time than it used to. But again, depending on the level you are, if you're a level 5, you're not going to finish it in 2 hours. If you're just getting started, level 0 or 1, you're going to finish it pretty quickly, because you may have some capabilities that are in the higher level, but it won't be some consistency. So you'll answer questions again, depending on the time frame that it takes you to collect the information. Once you turn it into us, we are promising or saying that we have a 1-week turnaround period. It's just a straight, this is it. If you have anything that's unique or that we have to consider, it may be a little bit longer. And again, what you see in terms of our recognition is we look for organizations that have achieved that level 3, 4, or 5, and there's some levels of validation that go into all of this, so we can make sure that we recognize appropriately. And there's all types of things that you can do. If any of you were on our call yesterday, we recognized our 2020 recipients of excellence in knowledge management and had some panel discussions with them, and it was a lot of fun. And here some of them are. So this is our second year to recognize. The global pandemic put a little bit of a delay in our process, but we now have cases on all of our 2020 recipients in our resource library. We also have information pages on them, so snapshots, spotlights. And I just encourage each of you to go in and really look. They all have, they all have unique things that they're doing and focusing on. But when you look at the base of what they're doing, how they're measuring, how they're setting up process flows, how they're supporting content management, developing communities of practice, and using technologies for collaboration or automation, there's a lot of similarities, and you'll start seeing the foundational elements that are so important to this. So let me I won't read all these out, but you can see it's quite a unique, global, diverse group. You just never know who's going to be doing really well in knowledge management, right? So I think you all know this. This is some research that APGC sponsored 10 years ago now, but I think it always hits there's always a punchline on this. And it matters, because you do see, when we looked at this data, we knew that there was something there, and we had to keep using it and pushing it out to our members to use this as a management tool to help improve their training programs. So with this said, and Zakia, I don't think we have, do we have any questions? If we do, I'm just not seeing them.
Cindy, we do have a question, and okay. I'm going to open up Roberto. He's actually got a couple questions for you. I'm going to open up his line so that he can ask live. Roberto.
Wonderful.
Hello, Cindy. Thank you. Congratulations on the presentation. It's very interesting. By the way, I'm Beto. I'm talking from Brazil. I'm from Impact Consulting. I have two questions, if you don't mind.
Yes.
The first one is, what kinds of metrics should be consistently measured in all levels of maturity, and what ones may be more specific to higher maturity levels? That's the first question.
Okay.
The second one is about measurements. In what extent the responsibility to measure may be or should be shared with business areas?
So let me do the first one because it's the easiest. That Roberto, the one that carries you through all levels is some sort of an activity measure that shows participation and engagement. So if you have a community strategy, you want to see how many people are coming. As I said earlier, if the community isn't producing the results the sponsor expects, then you may want to look at the quality of participation, right? So you can start looking at who is there. Do we have the experts there? Do we have the right people? So that's one way. Lessons learned is another. Think about that as a participation. So we come to that, and people always say, well, why do you count lessons? Well, because you need an inventory that people can draw from. But the more important thing is not just to count how many lessons are being captured, but how many are being applied and reused and getting to some type of an output. So once again, that shows some participative things. All of your digital work that you're doing, people interacting with content, thumbs up, thumbs down, that kind of shows the value, the relevance, and the quality of the content you're providing. So all of those things are just really great activities. And, start with just those simple things of what kind of behaviors are you trying to drive with your measures, with your activity measures. I want them to participate. I want them to comment. I want them to, I want to count the downloads that people have. Now, the downloads, when you start doing that, it's a great measure to look at. But remember, it doesn't give you what they're doing with that. It doesn't say, oh yes, my knowledge was it was accessed. We know that. But it doesn't really indicate whether it's transferred, whether it's reapplied. That now gets to your second question is, what's that engagement with the business that you have to go after? And going back to the very first slide, level 1 capability that I showed, that whole value path where you say, we do these activities, it impacts this business activity that is looking for this kind of outputs or outcomes, and we can influence that. We can make it happen. We can add value to it. We can make knowledge the key component, whatever it is, but you've got to have your business in on that discussion. They have to sit and agree to that. Yes, that's going to give value. And then sometimes it's harder, Roberta. You have to say, you don't have the measures we can link to. Is there a proxy, or is there something else we can look at that will give you, business leader, the indicator you need to show that we are impacting the performance you're expecting? So that's that conversation. And it's, Roberta, it's just good change management. It's just being able to understand your audience. And as I said, I love measurement. I'm an old accountant by trade. But the minute you start those conversations and people think you're going to showcase performance, even with participation, they get very nervous, so to speak. And so if you can actually, show them how this is going to impact and what the expectations are, you'll start getting them on board and, again, drive a lot of the participation you need from them. So I hope that gets to the heart of what you were asking about.
Great, Cindy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes, I have one question from Norman, and I'm going to open up Norman's line so that he can ask it live.
Hi, Norman.
Norman? And Norman, I think you're self-muted, so you may have to unmute your line. There you go.
How does that sound? Good morning, Cindy. I joined a little late. Believe it or not, I had about a 30-second power outage just as the call was getting started. But I've got everything rebooted. I'm back online. But I do have one question. You may have covered it earlier. Is there any charge associated with using your assessment tool online?
So that is such a great question, Norman. Thank you. So I know Zakia's giggling. So there is, for people who are not members of APQC, we call that a future member. We allow through the membership, each organization will get a complimentary use of the assessment tool every 12 months, so on an annual basis or whatever the 12-month period is. And so you get that. And the use of the tool for just a future member is $7,000. If a member wants to do multiples per year, so you want to do 5, 7, 10, we have organizations who do that because they do it across business units or divisions, then they will pay a discounted 20% discounted rate on that for multiples.
Okay.
And that is, let me just say this, and I'm gonna, while we're talking about this, Norman, I'm gonna take you here. I'm gonna get you to this assessment. I'm gonna go the long way. Zakia's like, there's shortcuts. I'm like, oh, let's go, because this is, you know, how some of us think.
Go for it, Cindy.
I'm just going in through knowledge management, see all this pretty stuff, and I'm going to around assess your program. And what I really want you to see is we have a lot of really short, like you can take a mini assessment that takes, 5 minutes. We also have where you can get some metrics back to really look at the performance of your capabilities. We have this assessment through our open standards benchmarking. And then of course we have the knowledge management capability assessment tool. And when you click on this, and this is what I wanted you to see, Norman, we give you an entire page to go in and look at, sample report, what that looks like, a lot of FAQs, frequently asked questions. And then there's a static version of the assessment. So I always encourage people, you can use this all day long. What you won't get, unless you have to turn it back into us. So when you go to take it, it will ask you to fill out a form, because we like to track and make sure you're getting the help and assistance and know when you may be sending it in, so we can align our resources. But we will then process it all for you, take you through the validation, the reporting and everything. But again, you're free to go in and look at this. We give you the whole purpose, and you can see, if you've not taken it before, it's in very different, a different view, not that complicated Excel view. This is where you go when you're ready to submit it, or if you wanted to print it. We always ask for demographic information. Remember, this comes back to when I'm asking you about, are you taking it for the enterprise? What's the size of your enterprise? Because in our reporting, we give you peer groups. We give you industry, size, region, all types of things. And that's how we know when you complete this. And then here we are, voila. So Norman, that's what I'm saying. You can get to this and look at it and, self-assess all day long. I would love it then if you give it to us, so we can give you a very robust, colorful dashboard, great insights from over 300 organizations that we're comparing you to as a whole, and then of course whatever industry. But this is how you go in and take it all. And again, you'll see where you click on your response. There's also a little button out here. I don't know if this will let me do it on I don't think this will on the static one. On the live one, when you click this little N button here, it will pull up a beautiful chart right underneath here that you can put your responses, your thoughts, questions, examples of your unique things that you're doing. You can put them all right there. So it's all in one tool for you. You don't have to go find it or scroll from page to page. It's right there in the question. And as I said, the capability statement itself has been turned into a question. We've given you objective statements, because now that we got all these years of data and all this stuff, we can tell you what we're looking for. And then, as I said, you can give unique responses in your free word field. And so this is it, guys. It's we've gotten very positive feedback from it, which I was thrilled. It takes you through each capability, 1 through 5, gives you a little bit of an example for each one. And we've seen a really nice positive uptick in people completing this. So Norman, hopefully that answered all your questions, and this makes sense as I'm taking you through this. I'll go down to measurement. Way down here. Don't get dizzy as I'm scrolling. Measurement falls under the process category, and here it is. There you go. So, as I said, this is, yeah. Okay. So you all see where to find it. Again, it's in, you can do a search bar and find KM capability assessment. Here is where you started. Again, I will tell you, this 4 to 6 is when you're in that 1 to level 3 capability. If you are deeper, I would add probably another 5 to 6 hours to that, just because you've got more capabilities. You probably have more partnerships that need to respond to it. Just however you're set up, it may be a little bit more complicated, but it certainly is easier than, and what we're hearing is a lot easier. Okay, I'll go back to slides then. I don't know if we have any more questions, Zakia, or
I don't see any other questions. I think you answered Norm's question, so thank you, Norman.
Yes, very much so. Well, look, guys, we are always here. These calls happen once a month. We'll be finishing out our last 2 capabilities in November and December, and then we have bunches of surprises for you coming for next year. But we encourage you to take this. We want to find you and recognize you as a level 3, 4, or 5 excellence in KM recipient, and we just want you to be able to use this to really keep your knowledge management program intact. So I really appreciate you joining today and spending some time with me and APQC. And we're here, and these will be coming to you as soon as Zakia pulls it all together. Thank you all very much.